I'm Jen Varna, founder of DocWorking, and I would like to thank you on behalf of the entire DocWorking team for joining us for this webinar on the topic of resilience. DocWorking's mission is to help physicians find balance between life and medicine by bringing dynamic coaches like Dr. Gabrielle Edenery and Jill Farmer together to create programs like this. Dr. Gabrielle Edenery is an innately gifted healer and teacher, and as a physician, practiced medicine in clinical and academic settings for years prior to becoming an ordained non-denominational minister and subsequently an exceptional physician coach. Gabriella draws on her broad experience and deep insights and is well known for her ability to lead physicians through transformations with tangible results. Jill Farmer was an Emmy Award-winning TV journalist prior to gaining national recognition for her coaching, especially well known for her best-selling book on time and stress management, There's Not Enough Time and Other Lies We Tell Ourselves. Jill has worked with physicians across the United States as individuals and at institutions including Harvard, Washington University in St. Louis, Northwestern, and also for medical organizations such as the American College of Cardiology. Together, life coaches Gabriella and Jill make an extraordinary team, and I'm excited to sit back and listen and learn as I hand this over to you, Gabriella.
Thank you, Jen, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for being with us today for this workshop on resilience. And my name is Gabrielle Edenery. I'm a life coach for physicians, and I work with physicians on work-life balance integration, about reconnecting with your calling in healthier ways. And so this includes career coaching, coaching around healthy relationships and healthy communications, as well as health and wellness coaching.
Thanks, Gabriella. And I'm Jill Farmer, and I am so excited to see such a great group of people with us here today. It's just really exciting to see so many of you that took the time out of your busy schedules to listen to some new ideas about resilience. I love working with physicians to help them with time and stress management so that they can better prioritize what really matters to them and have a little bit better of that work-life balance as well. And so from there, I'm going to send it back to you, Gabriella, to tell people how this all became possible today.
Indeed. We would like to say thank you to our sponsor, my good friend Andrew Freeman and his team at AJF Financial, providing comprehensive financial planning services to individuals, businesses, and professionals. And they take the time to take the added step of screening investments based on environmental, social, and governance criteria. So thank you, AJF Financial, and thank you to our amazing team, of course, at DocWorking, led by Dr. Jen Varna, for making this webinar a reality. Thank you, Jen.
Okay, just a couple of logistics. I think at this point, after this many months of pandemic, this is not anybody's first rodeo on a webinar or on Zoom, but just in case it is, if you click on your cursor down on the bottom of your screen, you'll see that thing that looks kind of like a cartoon box that says chat. That is how we are going to hear from you, those of us who are joining us today, to ask your questions and to make comments. And then we're going to answer those questions later on in the webinar. We have a lot of information we want to get to you, so we're gonna hold off and get to those a little bit later. But we know for a fact that we have people from both coasts, everywhere from California and Washington State to New York tonight, as well as from South Dakota to Florida. So it's just really great to have so many people from all over. And feel free to share experiences, ahas, anything over in that chat. And that's also where we'll get those questions from you later on. We are going to keep all of our participants muted today just to make sure we have a nice, clean audio for everybody to be able to hear. And with that, we're going to get going. So back to you, Gabriella.
Absolutely. And we're going to start with some definitions of resilience. I mean, resilience, of course, is a word that we hear a lot in any number of circumstances. And you kind of have an idea of what that is. But what we're going to talk about tonight is really ways to increase and build on that resilience in today's webinar. And so let's go with the definition of resilience that we're going to use for our webinar and conversation today. So resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. It's also the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape. Elasticity, which is a word that we're going to come back to as we move forward. And so today we're going to explore how to shift certain patterns that sabotage resilience, and also learn very simple tools that you can start using right away to strengthen your resilience, and also start a conversation having a better understanding of how to manage your emotions when dealing with high levels of stress. And so, you know what, at the risk of going down a personal road, this time of year is kind of an interesting one, because this is the time where 2 years ago, I lost both my parents. And so the day mom passed, it was 12:06 p.m. I got a call from my mentor. And so I picked up, and in that moment, I could feel the panic rising. She just passed, and that's all I could say. And she said, you know what, right now, you may not be able to hear this. Right now, you may not be able to hear this. But most people don't know or understand that it's such an amazing privilege and honor to be with someone in that particular time of their life. So I'd be honest with you, at that point, I could not hear it. And that's very true. I had to wait a little bit for it to sink in. And that took several days and sometimes weeks. And to go back to that, to be able to say, yeah. So I think the lesson from that, as we begin our discussion about resilience, is, finding beauty in the unexpected, finding beauty and finding solace in even the most stressful of situations. Again, it may not happen right away, but it can over time. And so that is right there, probably how I learned and relearned about resilience. And so this is a tool actually we use commonly in coaching, which is called reframing. And some people would call it kind of pivoting, where we help clients kind of shift a little bit, like 2 inches to the left, to look at the situation in a slightly different way, and trying to see what is in it there, that piece of beauty of resolution. So you want that to feel the feeling, and that's okay to feel the feeling. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's just a feeling. Now the question is to be able to feel the emotion, but not get swallowed up by it. And so there is finding stress in a good situation with the use of reframing is one of the tools of building resilience. So Jill, you were talking about another situation where reframing applies.
Yeah, I really like how you, your own lived experience helped your own definition of resilience through that lived experience. And I love you talking about finding the beauty in it. One of my favorite authors, Glennon Doyle, talks about situations like that as being brutal, right? Because they're brutal and beautiful at the same time. So when I think about my definition of resilience, I'm reminded of a physician client, and I share this with permission, from a few years ago, who was all kind of teed up for a big promotion, and it didn't come. There were a variety of other reasons, but he didn't end up getting this promotion. And what he noticed is it kind of sent him so off kilter that for a very long time, it defined him. That disruption, that disappointment, that experience that he didn't have, that he thought he was going to have, really defined who he was. And so when we started working together, our work and cultivating resilience in that situation was being able to integrate this disrupting experience, which there's no doubt it was hard, and be able to convert that into part of his life story without having it be the sole definition. So I think that helps us to think about together, why does resilience matter? Right. And we kind of generally know, well, hey, we'd like to get through tough situations, but really, we want to be able to get unstuck a lot of times. A lot of times the catalyst or that troubling situation, which has been difficulty, whether it's the loss of somebody, whether it's the big C for all of us for the last 10 months of COVID-19 and how disruptive that's been to all of our lives in such a variety of ways. We want to be able to cultivate resilience in order to move through and to get unstuck. And back to your original definition, which I love, Gabriella, is be able to stretch that elasticity of the rubber band so it doesn't snap us, right? Exactly. That's why it matters that we have resiliency. And I think, and another way of saying it is resilience helps put us back in the driver's seat. So we don't feel like life is a series of these things that are happening to us that we have no control or no agency over changing. So some of you are saying, okay, well, that's great, Jill, except for I am exhausted. after these last 9-10 months. My battery is drained. And some of you may have heard me say, COVID has it's kind of like having an app running in the background of our phone that's draining our batteries a lot faster than we wish it was. And we all wish we could get rid of that app, but that app is unfortunately not removable by us. Hopefully removable by vaccine soon enough. But right now we have to kind of be honest about our capacity. And the great news about cultivating resilience is we don't have to have it all come in superhero style and be able to just defeat whatever with this superhuman resilience. We can cultivate resilience. We can utilize resilience. We can use the resource of resilience in the tiniest little steps, and it will still make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I like what you say about what it is to be in a tough situation. And definitely this whole pandemic has been tough for everybody, and particularly healthcare providers. And getting unstuck, as you said, is not about pushing through a situation or pushing it aside or pretending it's not there and just kind of, okay, I'm just going to keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving. It's actually being able to be okay with feeling your emotions and being in that place. And at the same time, knowing that it's not going to it's actually going to help you move through the experience as opposed to trying to get around it. And so we want to move through the experience, and we want to do so as gently as possible. And so, docs, you know who you are and what you are. You are resilient people. Let's just say it right off the bat. Studies have actually shown that, but you know that you are that in terms of your resiliency scores compared to the general working population. Research has also shown that what you already know, you are a go-getter, you're practical, you're solution-oriented, you're goal-oriented, you make very quick and pragmatic decisions, and people look to you for those decisions. And so we want to make sure that when we talk about expanding your capacity of growing resilience, that it's not about forcing resilience. It's not about fixing resilience, but it's really about feeding resilience. And so resilience will ask you to kind of let go of that fix-it nature that physicians are known for. I mean, I certainly was one of those where everything was, let's find a solution, like right now. But resilience really asks you to take a breath and take a step back and really be able to be gentle with yourself just a little more. So I like the definition of resilience as we talked about earlier, and the word elasticity, and you mentioned that briefly a few minutes ago, Jill, that you may think of yourself as that rubber band. I mean, imagine the rubber band as you pull back and forth, and over time it may distort a little bit, it may change its shapes, and that's okay. I mean, difficult, stressful situations will change your shape, and that's okay. At the same time, let's say that the rubber band is pulled, and it gets to the point where it just either completely distorts or it snaps, and that's what we want to avoid. So building resilience, growing resilience, and we talked about a skill of like reframing, kind of seeing the situation, difficult situation, from a different perspective, a slightly different perspective, that you're decreasing the tension on that elastic. And that's really what we want to do. We don't want something else for you to do, to think about, to change that you don't have time for it. Oh my goodness, no, we don't want to add to your to-do list. Really, the bottom line is to make sure that you decrease that tension on the elastic. And so that's what we're talking about today. Jill, back to you as we start talking about strategies for resilience.
Yeah, I love that. It's the forcing versus feeding. Doesn't that feel so much more iterative and meaningfully productive to talk about feeding something as opposed to trying to force it? And again, that's where we get in that situation where we think about those rubber bands snapping, which is not what we are, what we're shooting for. And sometimes that requires, as I've heard Gabriella say on multiple occasions, it requires doing the opposite of what you normally do. And one of those strategies for shifting unhealthy is to be willing to shift those patterns in us, because we all have this default mechanisms within us that are running, particularly when we get under pressure. We tend to, when we get under pressure, default to the same coping behaviors. It just makes us human. The problem is sometimes those behaviors are really not helpful behaviors. Right. And so one of the things we know from the research on resilience is that when we can give ourselves the opportunity to pause, to question some of these automatic behaviors that we just jump into and start doing, we're more likely to be able to make choices that serve us as opposed to choices that are just the same pattern repeating itself and taking us down a potentially unhelpful place. So really simple question that you can see on your screen is this helping or hurting? Is this thought I'm having that I'm kind of playing on repeat and circling around in my head helping or hurting? Is this action that I'm taking helping or hurting? A quick story about that. Somebody I was working with who was in a leadership position here during the pandemic was trying to deal with a lot of different factors in their own life. And they got really frustrated with their kids' school. And they kept saying to me, oh, the school doesn't know what they're doing when it comes to educating these kids in these times. And I kept saying, okay, is that thought helpful? And they said, no, but it's true. And that's true. Sometimes things are true, but they're not particularly helpful. So I asked this person to just ponder for a second if there was a more helpful way to think about it. And what they came up with is what they really wanted was for their child to get something out of the semester. And by identifying what they really wanted, instead of focusing on that ruminating thought of something that was out of their control, it really helped them to reset and say, oh yeah, I really want my kid to get something out of this. And then they were willing to step in and take some meaningful action in order to have that happen. And I think that was really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that goes back to the idea of doing the opposite of what you would normally do. And so just subtle ways to break old patterns. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be, oh my goodness, I did it again. We want to relieve ourselves of any kind of judgment. We want to just try. There will be plenty of trial and error in any situation. And so as long as little by little, tiny step by tiny step, you start increasing that capacity to give yourself room to really just kind of be in the situation, to think a little more and to express your need. I think what your client said is that this is what I really want, which is an important factor. And so, I think that goes into I think you may have mentioned this already, but my favorite quotes of all time from Albert Einstein has been one of my guiding principles for many years. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So the question is, if I want a different result, then maybe it's time for me to approach a situation just slightly differently. And so that's where when Jill and I, we were talking about this, doing the opposite of what I would normally do, doing the opposite of what you would normally do. And so, when I was working as a medical director for this very kind of busy Brooklyn clinic, I realized, well, initially I didn't realize it was another default mechanism. Let me be that fix it. I'll take care of everything. Everything is fine. So, whatever situation came my way, I'll take care of it. Whether it was a patient, I'll take care of it. A nurse, I'll take care of it. The housekeeping staff, I'll take care of it. The front desk staff, I'll take care of it. So all these I'll take care of it keeps piling on to, of course, predictable situation, total and complete overwhelm. I'll take care of it. Somehow I'll get to it. I don't know how, but somehow I'll take care of it. It took me a long time to finally just kind of pull myself away and say, you know what, maybe I should change my vocabulary. Instead of saying, I'll take care of it, why don't I just say, well, I trust that you'll have a way to figure this out. Or, well, what do you think? What have you thought about this situation, and what do you think? And it didn't occur to me for so many years until I started trying it out. Well, what do you think? And next thing you know, what happens is that people say, well, I thought about this, and this is what I would like to see. In other words, they've already thought of a solution. But the minute I said, I'll take care of it, I'll take care of it, I'll take care of it, it kind of blocked the door for anybody else to come in and say and offer a solution, an idea, a creative solution. And so, building resilience is about that. And with clients, I'll do that. I'll say, well, you know what? How about turning I'll take care of it, or I've got this, into a question? What kind of question would you like to ask somebody else in terms of what they think of a particular situation? Or so that gives them an opening to really participate in what is going on around. And so it's a very empowering question. It helps you relieve your pressure. And at the same time, it empowers somebody else in springing into action, which is what I love about how to really engage other people. And engaging other people really is about asking for support. So that may be the opposite of what you normally do. If you're kind of the fix-it type of doctor, I'll take care of it, and everybody comes to you. But imagine then when you say that, well, what do you think? You're actually asking for support, which is another way to build resilience. So Jill, oh, am I failing? Let me see. I'm so sorry. Let me look at my notes because I did have one more thing.
I was going to say, I want to add one quick thing to that. Somebody
Sure.
added in the comments, which was excellent, which is sometimes when we get under pressure, we get more controlling.
Absolutely.
And I think that's exactly what you were talking about here. And a lot of us can really identify with that. So thank you for pointing that out to us as well. And yeah, now we're going to talk a little bit about that inner critic, which is another thing we tend to do to ourselves when we get under pressure, which is pretty incredibly unhelpful when it comes to resilience or trying to get unstuck.
Yeah, exactly. So, example, I didn't do enough. Oh, I missed that. I forgot this. What's wrong with me? I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time, et cetera. That would be kind of the inner critic. This one over there, Dr. So-and-so has their act together, but I don't. Why am I always feeling frazzled? Comparison is another way to really engage the inner critic, and the inner critic can really run wild. And so it's just for you to notice the inner critic. If you notice that it's there, that's the first step. Really, that tiny step. Oh, wow. Look at how I'm talking to myself. So think about it. Think about that day when you were a short coat doctor and you had your first stethoscope and your first ophthalmoscope, and you're into that room, excited because now you get to see a patient. This is, of course, pre-COVID times. And you're paying care and attention, and you're listening, and you're taking down all the details. And even now in your capacity working with patients and families, you will spend a little, that little extra time to really express that compassion and love and understanding. And then what do you say about yourself when you get out of that room and go down the corridor? I can hear the ahs right now. Imagine if you talked about yourself or to yourself in those moments the same way you would talk to your patients. And basically, you are your first client. You are your first patient. And what if you talk to yourself that way? Now, that would be a massive move. It's a little step, but a really big result in creating and expanding resilience for yourself. And so what I challenge my clients at the end of a session, I'll often say, well, list 3 accomplishments that you've had today. Now, funny enough, it has nothing to do with the to-do list. For the most part, it's something like, I sat with my patient today, and that felt good. That was an accomplishment. I protected my family today. That was awesome. And that would be an accomplishment. And so a lot of times it's the simple things that don't go in the to-do list that are completely different. And it's like, so use that as a tool. What did I accomplish today? And see what happens to your energy and how it shifts.
Yeah, that's such good stuff. Thinking in terms of, doing the opposite of what you normally do, which is those default patterns we talked about, talking to ourselves the same way we talk to, as a couple of people have pointed out in the comments, talking to a trusted friend, a patient that you want to care for, somebody that like and respect, and being able to use that voice with ourselves is really, I think, just a wildly helpful practice for us to begin to make forward progress. Because a lot of times when we're talking to ourselves in that inner critic, never enough, comparison, right? The quote, comparison is the thief of joy. I love that. Or I'm going to age myself, as Stuart Smalley used to say on the old Saturday Night Live, compare and you will despair. I think there's both of those ways show us that when we start trying to be critical of ourselves in our head, it actually tends to freeze us, it tends to slow us down, and it tends to keep us from being focused on what matters. Exactly. Speaking of which, another helpful tool that we know the research shows us is really effective in resilience and in being able to exercise resilience in challenging situations and after large disruptions, is being a better steward of where your focus and attention is, where your energy is going. And so I like to do this exercise with clients. Some of you may have done it with coaches or with therapists, and it requires very non-complex tools. A pen, I used a Sharpie here, and a piece of paper. And I'd like you all to please appreciate my fantastic artistic ability. As you can see, it's not really required. You just simply draw the circle on a piece of paper, and then you grab a pen. And inside the circle, you put the things that you are concerned about, the issues that are worrying you or that you are taking up your attention and time and focus, that you have some degree of control or influence over the outcome. So inside the circle are things that you're seeing as challenges or issues in front of you that you have some ability, even a tiny ability is okay, but to influence your control over it. On the outside of the circle are the things that you are focusing your attention, worrying about, issues that are in front of you that are outside of your control, things that you don't have any ability to control. And I just did this in a corporate program recently with a large group of people as part of some time and stress management training. And so many people said, oh, I can't believe how much of my attention is focused on things that are outside of the circle. Or they say to me, oh, it feels so good to remember that when I spend more time and energy focusing on the things in the circle, it makes me feel like I'm making forward motion, which directly relates to what you just said, which is to have people identify things that they've accomplished, because we know, because of the work of Martin Seligman and all those brilliant people at University of Pennsylvania on our psychology that helps us thrive, that a sense of accomplishment is really good for us and our ability to thrive and to be successful. So when we can look at where things that we can influence and can make a difference on and spend more of our time focusing on that, we just know it's good for our mental health.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that there was one more tool that you wanted to talk about, which was gratitude.
Oh yeah, that's thank you for that reminder. The other thing I use this as a reset button for people that are feeling really overwhelmed as a defining delineation. Another really good reset button that I know both Gabrielle and I use with clients is to invite them to pause when they're feeling a little bit spinny or a little bit like there's too much going on, and slow down and think of 3 things they're grateful for. Mm-hmm. You have to actually feel the gratitude. You can't just say, oh, sunshine, sky, air. If you have to actually feel the emotion of gratitude, but we know that the brain can't feel fear and gratitude at the same time. And that gratitude practice, it turns out it wasn't just Oprah trying to sell her gratitude journals back in the days, that there's an actual science behind the practice of being grateful as a reset button for ourselves and a way to be able to cultivate and to experience resilience. So now it's on to your next point.
All right, awesome. But the good news, because there's actually a wonderful question in the chat that says, easier said than done, right? And so let's say yes to that, because it's easier to talk about it initially. But you know what? That's the beauty about resilience. The good news, well, there are 2 pieces of good news as I'm hopefully, approaching this question, which I'm sure many people have. Good news is that although most of 85% to 90% of our thoughts are worry thoughts, and that has been demonstrated by research, that 85% of the time, whatever we're worried about, which is really generally outside that circle, right, doesn't come to pass. So, thank goodness, it doesn't come to pass. The second thing about the good news about resilience is that it's not a fixed trait. So let's say you have some free weights hanging out in the garage and you haven't lifted in a while and you want to go and start getting in shape. You're not going to start with 50-pound weights right off the bat. You're going to start with something a little small, 2 pounds, 5 pounds, 10 pounds maybe, but a small step which will get you to your goal, right? The same thing with learning the guitar. It starts with 1 string, 1 finger, 1 note. It's not something that you'll be playing Led Zeppelin overnight. It's something that's going to happen over time. And that's the good news about building resilience. It's a tiny step. Each tiny step goes a long way. You will get great returns from a tiny step. And so easier said than done. I would say, you're right, it's not, but it really is. Once you have that commitment, once you have that in the back of your mind that you're going to start creating some decreasing or decompressing that elastic, that creating some more breathing room for yourself emotionally and mentally, then you know what? Once you start with one thing, it gets a little easier and a little easier and a little easier. So I invite you to really, you can use any of the tools that we talked about today, and that there are a couple more that we're going to talk about as well, to really just get started. Just start with one. You don't have to do all of it. Just start with one, and just start with that tiny step. And then along the way, you may find something that is more, appeals to you more, and you try that out. Have fun with the trial and error. I think it's a fantastic way to go about it. What
Yeah,
do you
super
think?
good. Yeah, super good reminder that this isn't a fixed trait. We tend to, and I notice that a lot of times physicians will tend to say, "Oh, I'm good at this," or "I'm not good at that." And
Mhm.
resilience is something we all have, and it's a muscle we can all build. And so we just look at it as a well we can dip into, not this thing that we either have or don't have. And I love that you reminded us of that. And one of the ways that we can dip into and strengthen that resilience muscle is by becoming a little more aware of our emotions. I mean, we could do a full, half-day seminar just on emotional agility and the new research that shows us that people who have some emotional agility tend to be happier and more successful. That doesn't mean those are people who are better at shoving down their emotions. It doesn't mean people who are better at feeling their emotions or brooding in their emotions and leaving their emotions all out for the rest of us to see. Emotional agility is being able to say, I'm feeling this, and move through that. If I'm conscious of my emotion and aware of my feelings, it just helps me to make better choices about what I say and what I do. And so I notice, I mean, a lot of us can be emotional avoiders where we kind of stuff it down. The not great news about that is it tends to come out sideways, often
Mhm.
at other people and often in situations which we wish it wasn't. By the same token, if we're somebody who is constantly brooding in those emotions, that can make it tough to kind of keep things on an even keel professionally and personally as well. So I think this time in this last year of kind of having a lot of our emotions amplified by the situations in the world that are happening, it's been a good laboratory for all of us to get a little bit more agile with being able to say, oh, I'm feeling this, and not and being able to feel an emotion, to process emotion without necessarily feeling like the emotion takes over or we have to act from that. So anything else that you want to add about emotional agility?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you brought that word, that point before. Um, Enlist a trusted partner, a coach, a therapist, a counselor, someone that you trust. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with having an emotion. Doctors tend to kind of stuff their emotions. I got to just be there, go to the next thing, take care of my patients, take care of my family. But where's your emotional health? And that has to be taken care of. And so, that I think would be a really, really important step, to work with somebody to start learning how to do that. Again, just as resilience is a skill you learn, develop, and grow in, some trial and error, some kind of weird, awkward, funny moments, learning how to process emotion, developing that emotional agility as well takes practice. It's one note at a time on the guitar, right? And so, but having that agility, as Jill mentioned, does put you back in the driver's seat. You can now make an informed choice. Even feeling what you're feeling, you can make a choice about that feeling and how you're going to act and move forward in that, as opposed to reacting to it. All of us, most of us, if not, and you may want to put that in the chat or not, I don't know, but I remember the days when being berated by a physician or somebody higher up the food chain was never terribly pleasant. And or snapping at somebody as well out of frustration. And so again, it can come out sideways, and you want to be able to be aware of that. If it does, then don't beat yourself up. The whole point is to release judgment and the inner critic, but you get to try it again. And that's the beauty of life. It's just, as you said, an incredible laboratory for developing these skills over time, not overnight, over time. And so I think that's what I wanted to say about emotional agility, except for one thing. I'm so sorry. We were talking about little quick ways that you can start discharging energy. And that is important. Taking a walk, exercising on a daily basis on a regular basis is also a great way of discharging kind of that pent up energy. One of my favorites is journaling. You can grab a piece of paper and just write what it is you need to write and say what it is you need to say, and then stick it in the shredder. It's great. Nobody has to see it, but it also helps discharge that kind of energy, getting some air. If you have the opportunity to take your shoes off and put your feet in the grass, I mean, whatever helps you feel grounded and brings you back and discharges that energy so you can then make an informed decision. I think it's worth taking the time. It's worth saying, excuse me, I need a minute, to take care of yourself. And these things really can happen very, very quickly.
Yeah, really good points, I think, about those emotionals. So we want those being able to journal and take walks and do those things for our emotions. So a few things we just want to remind you as we are sharing these ideas with you, that we want you to distill them down, to be able to take them home with you today and hopefully put them into action and integrate them and weave them into your life, is one of the ways that we can give ourselves resilience when we're feeling stuck in situations is to remember that we do have choices. It helps us, even though we can't often control circumstances. Like a lot of us, if we would have written the script, of course, we never would have written the script to have a world pandemic and all of the tragedy and the disruption and the challenges that have come out around that. We can't always, of course, choose major situations in our life. It's just choosing how we respond to them and make them part of our lives. And that allows us to stay in the driver's seat of our own life, even when things are challenging. Also reminding ourselves what defines us, right? Back to that original story I talked about, that disruption in that doctor's life of not getting promoted. He had let that define him for a while, and it really wasn't working out so well in his life. So taking back the challenges that are in our life, but taking the challenges in our life, but taking back them defining us. We want to be the ones who define what our lives look like and how we show up for them. Another reminder that all of us do have resilience, right? When something hard happens, when we have that plot twist, we all have that resilience, that muscle that we can develop, even in the tiniest little steps, even if we're really tired, even if our battery is really drained, the tiniest little steps can help us do that. And that's the final point. Tiny steps do count.
And I can imagine.
I was going to say, we were both talking about earlier, as we've been putting together all of these ideas, that resilience is not something that we can cultivate and then avoid the hard stuff. We got to go through it. And by going through these situations and being willing to move to the other side, our muscles do get stronger, and that's how we develop it.
Absolutely. And enlist support, really enlisted, trusted support, because, in my experience as a doc, and I've met plenty of docs along the way who want to go it alone, fix it themselves, fix it alone. I can take care of it. I know how to fix things. I don't think you would expect your patient to fix themselves. So if you are your first patient, which is what we said earlier, then please don't do that. Enlist help. These are new skills you're learning. And for some who are already kind of in that mode, wonderful. And for those who are kind of just starting out with little steps and trying to learn how to be gentle with yourself, how to take care of yourself emotionally and mentally, how to grow that resilience without having to force it or make it happen, right? Then having that partner to help you through that, I think, is a very valuable resource, whoever you choose to work with. And so I think that we are. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Jill, or we're kind of moving in the last section?
I want to say what I really want is for people to come play with us at the end of this month. And so you want to tell us a little bit about what's coming up with staff?
Absolutely. We're totally excited about this. We have a weekend, January 30th and January 31st, Saturday and Sunday, for 3.5 hours each time. You look at the time, 10:30 to 2 p.m. Eastern time. And we're going to Jill and I are leading an interactive workshop called Quick Wins to Get Your Life Back in 2021, right? And so this is for women physicians, and we're excited about this workshop. We're going to talk about time and stress management tools. We're also going to talk about visioning and, how do you get to create what you want for yourself in 2021 and beyond. And so it's going to be live, interactive, fun, really practical ways to really start moving that moving yourself back in the driver's seat for 2021. And so we also have other offerings coming up at DocWorking over the next few months. And gentlemen, if you have women physicians, colleagues, friends that you want to refer to the Stat Weekend, we would love to have them. And thank you for your support. We're very, very grateful for that. And so the other thing is that the Stat Weekend will figure some really useful bonus materials, which includes video on contract negotiation, video on mindfulness, practical mindfulness tools, as well as a resource list for additional services and information. And so we are looking forward to the end of January. You can sign up now at docworking.com. And there is a discount that ends actually tomorrow. Save $300 and sign up today. So thank you for that. And I think we're ready for the Q&A if there's anything else.
Yeah. I really hope people come play with this on that weekend, because I think it's going to be amazing. So we have a little bit of time here to answer a question or two. And I've been kind of glancing over here. Amanda, is there anybody that sent a question just to the panelists? Amanda from DocWorking is helping us that everybody hasn't seen that Gabrielle and I could answer.
Yes, we actually have 3 questions that came in.
Oh, great.
Great.
So our first question is, in regard to the exercise of the circle, what do you suggest if you truly have no control over the most stressful situation you're facing?
Okay. So in that circle exercise, which is the one that we talked about here, what do you do if you truly don't have any control over the situation? I think the thing to think about with that is to remember that a lot of times we wail and gnash our teeth at the stressors in life, the things that we wish they're happening that we wish were not happening. As opposed to taking a look inward and seeing what we can do to manage our stress better, right? The stress we're experiencing is in reaction to a stressor. And so when we can do things that we know work for managing stress, like exercising, like having a trusted thinking partner, reaching out for support, like doing mindfulness and meditation, even if you're like me and you say, oh, I'm not good at that, learning how to cultivate a little bit of mindfulness and meditation can go a long way for helping you to better process stress about things that are happening in the world that you don't have any control over, but that they still make you feel stressed. Gabriella, what would you say to that question?
I would say go back to your accomplishment list. I mean, it's really hard to want something to happen and to happen in a certain way. I mean, I was involved in a lot of amazing patient access projects in my time. And so, we had amazing victories piloting a project where we got our patient waiting times down from like 2.5 to 3 hours, working in busy clinics in underserved areas in New York City. And next thing you know, we get it down to an hour for about 70% of our patients. We're excited about our results. I get to present to the board of directors. I bought a new suit for the event. I mean, everything was so exciting. And then I get back to the office only to be told that they were not going to fund the project. Oh, the world fell apart in that moment. And to be honest, looking back at that situation, it's like, okay, well, knowing what I know now, what I've done back then, is being able to see the victories in the moment. What is it that's in my circle? What's in my circle was the team I was working with, was the ideas that we were sharing, was the excitement that we were generating with this project, was the pilots. All of that was in my circle and in the circle of our team members. Then, just like you're playing tennis, you hit that ball, it goes across the net. That's no longer mine. But I got so upset that here I am swatting, hoping to hit a ball that is nowhere near me. What do you mean? No resources? Are you kidding me? Well, maybe next year. What do you mean next year? We proved ourselves. We have all this wonderful data that proves that the system works, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so after a while, it was about understanding that, let me be really just satisfied with what is around me immediately, what's in my circle, as you say. And that on the other side of it is the politics, the administrators, the higher up physicians, all these people who make decisions that I have no idea, that you have no idea what is actually going on in those rooms. So you get to hit that ball, position yourself, do so in a way that you've been proud of. It may not hit, it may go out of bounds, it may return, it may not. You don't know that. But say, hey, you know what? We did good because we hit that ball. We committed and we went forward with this. And so that can be applied to any situation really, is to just see what is my circle of influence. What can I say at the end of the day? Say, you know what, it didn't always work out the way I thought it would be, but you know what, I did my best, and that's good enough. You know, so that to me is another way of kind of looking at the circle, inner circle and outer circle.
Yeah, it really is. So it's time for us to, I love working with you. I can't wait to do this again at the end of the month. It's so fun to work together and to share our ideas and have this collective brain trust of the work that I know we both love doing with these particular people. So we hope to all see you at the end of the month. And then we want to thank one more time, Gabriella,
our sponsor,
the people that
AJF.
made this happen so we could have this free webinar with all this great information.
So thank you to AJF Financial Services, Andrew Freeman and his team. And thank you to our wonderful team at DocWorking, who have all made this possible today. And thank you, all of you, for joining us for this webinar. I hope you got a lot out of it. We will have a recording available. And so we're excited for the next steps, which is coming up. There was a question that came up on the chat we need to address. Did also the STAT course, although it was already addressed because there was okay, so I'm going to let it go. And
yeah, the answers are there. I was going to say the answers are there. People had good conversation, and those of you watching the recording, we're so glad you watched it. And remember, when you tune in live, you get to be part of some of those interactive things as well. So thank you all very much for being here. What a great turnout. What a great conversation. And we can't wait for future conversations with all of you again. Until then, check out docworking.com and we'll talk soon.